So I've been busy, just way behind on things, on talking about my thoughts about some of the stuff going down in boxing, especially this past weekend. But as I'm watching this Golden Boy card right now, then the in between fights, waiting on the main event for Jojo Diaz taking on Victor Terrazas, and of course, if Diaz wins, he'll get a shot at Gary Russell Jr. As it appears, which is I think a pretty solid fight, a very interesting fight. But going off of what happened last week, and George Groves, he outboxed Chris Eubank, had Eubank looking foolish. I mean, I can't really expound much more upon what other people already have. A lot of people really shitting on Eubank, but honestly, I mean, I thought at the very least, he showed high level of grit, a high level of determination. I mean, he a hell of a chin. He took a lot of shots. George Groves was nailing him with tons of flush right hands. I mean, arguably dropped Eubank on two separate occasions in the fight, and I mean, Eubank, it's just a matter of he lacks the fundamental skills, even in a brawler sense. Because there's a lot of people that like to talk shit about brawlers. Like, oh, he's just coming forward and throwing punches or whatever the fuck. But there's a certain level of skill that comes with that comes with being able to cut off the ring, that comes with being able to either like slip through shots that are being thrown at you, or otherwise take a lot of the heat off of them. I mean, all you gotta do is look at, like say like a Julio Cesar Chavez in his prime, when he used to do that, the way he used to cut off the ring and kind of slip and kind of slough off shots in the midst of, even when he did get hit. And you don't even necessarily have to go back that far. There's been a number of fighters that have been capable of doing it. I've mentioned on a few different occasions, Glenn Johnson was actually extremely good at doing that, especially considering the fact that he was so short for the division that he fought in. That was a style that worked really well for him, and paid a lot of dividends even at an advanced age as he was. But I mean, Groves, he took him to school. Jurgen Bremer's out of out of the or out of the semifinals, unfortunately. So it's looking like, or excuse me, yeah, Jurgen Bremer was out of it. So Callum Smith, the guy that's replacing Bremer, I only know of him as a like a kickboxer, like a K1 kickboxer. So I doubt that Callum Smith will have much trouble defeating him and going on to the finals. And actually Smith versus Groves is a reasonably interesting fight. Like we'll really see what Smith has. Really see if he has what it takes when he gets in there with Groves, because at the very least, Groves may not necessarily look like some sort of like unstoppable, unbeatable force, like some like truly elite, like all-time great type super middleweight, but he's a damn good super middleweight. He's a guy that definitely is somebody to be reckoned with. Has a fair bit of punching power of his own, very snappy and explosive, reasonably quick. And even though I favor Groves in the fight, Callum Smith is a big, strong guy for super middleweight, in spite of the fact that he hasn't necessarily progressed in the fashion that a lot of people initially projected him at, probably 2-3 years ago. Maybe it'll be the night where it all comes together, but that remains to be seen. He still does have to get by his semifinal opponent, his new semifinal opponent. I can't think of his name off the top of my head though, unfortunately. But just moving on. David Benavidez kind of avenged, quote unquote, the semi-controversial, I guess, the first decision victory over Ronald Gavril in a dominant display. I mean, won damn near every round. I only gave Gavril one round, if I remember correctly, in the fight. And I mean, Benavidez had him hurt badly a number of times, had him look like he may be on his way to potentially forcing the ref's hand, possibly stopping Gavril later in the fight. Or in the middle rounds rather. But Gavril showed a lot of grit and good chin as well. Good punch resistance, and made it all the way until the late stages of the fight, and actually made a reasonable scrap of it for a few rounds there, especially in the middle rounds. It seemed like Benavidez might have started tiring out a little bit, as well as Gavril going to the body really nicely in response to what Benavidez was going to the body as well. And he definitely gave Benavidez at the very least something to fight for. Even though he was winning the rounds, he definitely had to work for several of those rounds in order to win them. But he did win it much more clearly than the first time around. Of course, he didn't get dropped this time as he did the first time around. I think really the first fight was, I thought it, after the first fight happened, in the midst of it happening, as well as since then, and I think I've been proven correct since then, that I just think that David Benavidez, after the Porky Medina win, was gassed up on himself. I think that he was cocky. I think that he thought like, well, shit, I'm the baddest motherfucker on the planet. I'm the youngest champion in boxing. Nobody can stop me. He had highlight videos talking about like, oh, this kid's the truth and he's the future of super middleweight and this, that, and the third. And I think it got to his head, and he half-assed it probably in training leading up to Gavril, thinking like, shit, I'm gonna knock this TMT scrub out or whatever. This is like some Ossaran guy of Mayweather stable. I'm just gonna go in there and knock his block off and be done with it. Move on to the next one. He has almost all knockouts in his wins, so he probably thought that, especially after the win against Medina, who himself had looked really good up until that point and hasn't looked as good since. But great win for Benavidez. He marches forward, and I think he's probably the best super middleweight at the moment. I think he's really the best guy there. I'd say that Herberto Ramirez probably deserves to be rated higher than Benavidez, just by virtue of he's been around at that top level for a little bit longer than Benavidez has, and he's been very consistent in his outings. Every outing he's he hasn't, I guess, like lit the world on fire necessarily with like explosive athletic ability or anything of that sort, like the way that Benavidez has like the huge punching power, the very fast hands and combinations and stuff, or like way Groves can kind of move about the ring and everything is real explosive with single shots. Ramirez is more of like a workman like fighter, high volume, body punching, head punching type of workman like fighter, and he's a bit more of like kind of a mid range to inside fighter, but he can box on the move as well. I think he would actually give a lot of difficulty for Benavidez, but promotional issues being what they are, I doubt that fight happens anytime soon. I think we're much more likely to see Benavidez against either the Durrell brothers sometime in the future, potentially Jose Uzcategui, if Uzcategui defeats Andre Durrell in their rematch, or maybe George Groves, if especially if Groves wins the World Boxing Super Series tournament. Considering the deep history that there is between Richard Schaefer and Al Heyman. So that was Benavidez. Danny Garcia had a stay busy fight, as it were, against Brandon Rios, and a fight that was, I think, a bit tougher than most people projected it to be. Even myself, I didn't think that Rios would be able to give a ton of trouble to Garcia, not as much as he wound up doing, incidentally. Who knows? Maybe Danny Garcia kind of did almost not unlike Benavidez, where it's like he didn't train as hard as he potentially could have. Rios definitely looked like he was ready to go. Was giving Garcia a lot of issues on the inside, although Garcia has had issues on the inside. With a number of fighters. Peterson and Mauricio Herrera most notably. Gave him absolute hell. Arguably, both beat him. I thought that Herrera definitely beat him. That Peterson, really pretty much drew with him. And Rios was definitely giving him a lot of trouble, and I thought may have been very troublesome down the stretch had he managed to survive that. But Garcia, if nothing else, is a massive puncher. Regardless of how telegraphed some of those shots are, the kid can crack, and crack he did, and cracked Brandon Rios dead in the face, made him lean back. Like the old Fat Joe song. Even Roy Jones was forced to lean. He made him lean back and laid him down, man. Rios. I've never seen Rios get done like that. So, Garcia, at the least he has that feather in his cap, I guess not unlike what Omar Figueroa kind of recently did to Robert Guerrero. I guess, some of the slightly newer era kind of getting rid of the older era, as it were, in both of those situations. But, for what it's worth, shit, hell of a knockout. Much better knockout, I'd say, than what he did over Rod Salka. Because, everybody knew that Rod Salka was a sacrificial lamb going in there. Rios kind of was to a certain degree as well, but Rios at the very least was given a good level of resistance to Garcia up until that point. Rod Salka just, you knew that the end was near, the end was nigh, and it wasn't going to end pretty for him, and it did not. Nor did it for Rios. But hey, Salka did get it together somewhat good after that. If I remember correctly, he beat Monty Clay after that, which was a good win. But Rios, I think, is pretty much at the end of the line, man. But he's one of those guys that unfortunately I think he's gonna just stay in the sport way too long for his own good, or for his family's own good. Unfortunately, I don't know. I do think that some people kind of overblow the idea, like, oh, like so and so has slurred speech and this and that. I mean, the speech pattern portion of your brain is, at the very least, somewhat separate from some of the other analytical portions. So, just because certain words may not come out correctly, or certain things which your throat and how they're translating don't come out the greatest, doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost your marbles. I'll put it that way. But that'll get into a whole nother, like, kind of medical type discussion that I'm not really going to get into at this point. I'm long-winded as it is, so I don't need to go any deeper into that. But I get the feeling like I'm forgetting something. I'm gonna make a separate video previewing the Superfly card. I've been kind of lagging on that. I've been really meaning to drop some some thoughts about Dani Nietes in particular. Dani Nietes is a guy that is one of the kind of the torch holders, the torch bearers of the lower weight classes, or he has been at the very least for like the last decade. Really, one of the torch bearers of the lower weight classes in terms of the elite fighters of said weight classes of like 105 to 115, and now he's at 112. Even though I do think that this not unlike what happened with Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, where he was kind of pushing it, going all the way up to 115. I think Nietes is kind of pushing it, getting into 112. Although his opponent coming up, Juan Carlos Revico, is a similar age, similar experience, and similarly came up from a lower weight class. He was originally started at 105, or excuse me, at 108, not 105. Nietes started at 105, but I'm really interested in that fight in particular, especially because of the fact that this is going to be both of their first times on the HBO stage, on the big U.S. stage. Nietes has fought in the U.S. before, but not on this grand stage, not with this much attention being placed on him, especially with regards to the potential of him maybe fighting Roman Gonzalez in the future, as well as the murderer, the murderer of flyweight, Daigo Higa, the young gun, the young cannon. Not even the young gun, the young fucking cannon. Not the young lion, but the young fucking, transformer. This dude just goes in there to wrecking shop on people. So I'm gonna be really interested and intrigued to see kind of what's going on with kind of the regeneration of the flyweight ranks, considering the fact that it's time for it to regenerate in the absence of Gonzalez, Estrada, and Ioka, who were the former standing elite guard at that weight class. But I'll catch you guys on that video when I make it. Should be dropping sometime probably later tonight, if not tomorrow. But that's all for this one. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.